Alright, here we are outside of the second bonus dungeon in the game, Hellfire Chasm. Now, given this area isn't Earthgift Shrine, this should go a hell of a lot better than, well, that dungeon did, partially due to the fact that there is no annoying forest maze floor that takes forever to get through. Now, unfortunately, this dungeon is double the length of Earthgift Shrine. That dungeon had 5 floors, this one has 10. But, on the bright side, we have to go through it twice rather than 4 times. Now, there's still 4 bosses, however, there are only 2 per boss room. Meaning, on the 5th and 10th floors, you have a choice between 2 bosses. As such, you only have to go through this dungeon twice to see everything, which is very nice. Now, like Earthgift Shrine and, well, any of the dungeons, there are randomly placed floors. And most of these are, surprisingly enough, fire-based, so I hope you liked Mount Gold. Actually, this room is kind of reminiscent of, what was it, floor 2 or 3 of Mount Gold? That sort of maze-like room with all the treasure. But, I'm not going after all the treasure because it takes a long time to get to, and given the random nature of treasure placement in these dungeons, it's hardly worth it. Because I'll probably just go all the way out of my way to get like an elixir or 50 gil or something useless like that. There can be some useful treasure, but try to only get it on your way. Like this, Echo Grass, I don't need that. When's the last time I was silenced? Have I even been silenced? I don't think I have been silenced. So yeah, treasure, unless you know there is something really valuable on a certain floor, don't go after it. And chances are you probably don't know if there's anything valuable on a certain floor unless you look up a guide, so it really isn't worth it. Now, the thing I dislike about Hellfire Chasm, well, it doesn't have as many annoying floors as Earthgift Shrine does. The problem with a lot of these bonus dungeons is the fact that it's basically just taking a previous aesthetic and just saying, oh look, it's Mount Gold, except now it's more of a maze somehow. Of course, now I'm on this floor, which just sort of proves me wrong, except for the fact that I was just through 3 fire rooms, so there's probably a point there somewhere, and there's not really that much interesting going on. Like this floor, it's just a floor where there are 2 different directions to go. I went right, and eventually I reached the exit. Not much to it. Luckily though, these have been short, so we're already to the boss room, so let's go fight our first boss. Now, of course, the last boss was based off Final Fantasy III, so you can probably guess what this is going to be based off of. That's right, of course, it's Final Fantasy IV. And what better bosses to represent Final Fantasy IV than the 4 Lords of the Element? Or 4 Fiends of the Element? The terms are interchangeable. Anyway, this is Skarmelion, kind of difficult to pronounce, and also I've got the pronunciation from that one Hydain song in my head, and I'm pretty sure that's not even applicable to the English version. But anyway, Skarmelion is a pretty easy boss in Final Fantasy IV. In fact, he's actually even easier in this version, due to the fact that he doesn't actually summon any zombies to fight you, he's just fighting you alone. All he's really got are his normal attacks and thunder, neither of which should really be all that threatening. To be honest, I don't even know why I'm bothering to buff at this point, because I'm already doing plenty of damage to him. Look at that, I'm doing almost 1,000 damage to the poor bastard, and he's just going down. He is doing a bit of damage, but it's not nearly enough to really do that much. Really, he's gonna go down pretty quickly, just like he did in Final Fantasy IV. Honestly, there's not much to say about this guy. He's just that one dude who sort of looked like Ferryman or something. See? He's dead already. Thank you! I'm sure glad you appreciate it. But wait! There's more! Ah, come on. You didn't really think they'd bring back Skarmelion without bringing this back. Now, again, like 4, he has a second form, except, you know, unlike in that game, this isn't a back attack, because for those of you unaware, he actually did back attack you, which is rather unusual given, he's a boss. Now, Scarmeleon is generally said to be a pretty easy boss. However, in the DS version, he was actually pretty tough. Poison Gas was one of those reasons. Basically, Scarmeleon had counterattacks, and he actually countered normal moves and fire magic, which was his weakness. Both of his counters were actually pretty devastating. Poison Gas could really do some damage, and I believe his other move was Cursed Elegy, which was also pretty bad in its own right. So basically Scarmeleon was pretty tough. In this version, not so much. He's got Poison Gas, it's not gonna do anything for me, I'm protected from poison, so really he's got nothing. So he's a lot less threatening than he was in that game, but at least they brought back the fact that he can, he has two forms and all that, because that's pretty nice. I like that little reference. But again, he's just too easy. Though I do admit he's hanging on for a good long while. And I believe Cursed Elegy actually did silence on the party, that's the status it inflicted, and I believe he used that to counter fire attacks, which of course would shut up characters who tried to use fire on him. But he doesn't seem to have that in this game, probably because Cursed Elegy wasn't actually a move in this game. So he just has Poison Gas and normal attack. So, down he goes. Oh well, he gave me a Lunar Curtain, and I'm never going to use it. Oh, and also, before we move on, if you want to get out of the dungeon, you can actually take that teleporter and you'll get right out, and oh boy, this floor. This is one of those gimmicky floors that almost makes me wish we were back in that huge mesh of dungeon that just reminds me of Mount Gold but isn't as well designed as Mount Gold. Basically, we have these guys walking back and forth. Yep, that's the gimmick. Now, you see those sparkles on the floor? Don't step on them, those are fixed encounters. So basically, what we have to do is get around these little floor sparkles, but we have to wait for villagers going at various speeds. Otherwise, we'll just have to run headlong into these encounters like we just did. And in order to get to the exit without any trouble, we have to wait for that lady. Oh, what fun! Okay, Lava Floor, did I insult you? I'm sorry for that. I'm A-okay with Mount Golg except more of a maze now. Because you know what? I don't have to wait for people walking back and forth, and I like that. It also gets us away from the random battles too, which is pretty nice because there really aren't any threatening random battles around here. Hell, they're still throwing black goblins at us. Can you believe that? Oh, hey, this area. Oh shoot, this area. I probably shouldn't be standing around. Alright, so this is sort of the exact opposite of lava floors. Now, you can stand on lava, but you won't get hurt as long as you're standing still. In this area, you get hurt no matter what, so it's basically Lava 2.0, and Dark Elemental. You sure are fire-themed. Actually, I rather like that background, now that I mention it. I'm pretty sure that's unique to this area, because it sure as hell wasn't Mount Gold. Look at that background, it's neat. Anyway, I'm dying, so let's get a move on. So, you might have noticed, but these gray tiles, you don't get hurt when you're on top of them, so if you're running low on HP, step on one of those and take a break or something. Of course, you could always go to the menu or something, but hey, well, just step on the gray panels, dude. You should do that. Absolutely nothing we can't take care of by this point. But, again, at least it's not a black goblin. I don't know why they're still throwing those guys at us, because really, they were a joke in Earthgift Shrine, and they're a joke here. In fact, if you go through the dungeon, just right as it unlocks, black goblins are still a joke. No matter what point you fight them at, they are easy to kill. Silver Dragon. What can Silver Dragons do? I think they can actually use ice attacks, maybe? Well, now I'll never know, because he's dead. Well, got introduced to a bunch of new enemies, and they were all easy, and look at that! We're actually back on the world map. Now, this is actually one of the really cool floors of this dungeon, possibly even the best, so it's kind of neat that we came down here. Of course, we also have some new random encounters, and just look at that background, isn't that nice? did we get this at the river? I don't think we got this in the river back at Crescent Village or whatever that was. This is also a nice background. Actually, I really like the backgrounds. They did a good job on those. Of course, then again, they hardly matter because these guys are dead almost immediately, but hey, you know, they did a nice job, so there's that. Anyway, the thing about this map is there are actually 3 versions of it. The goal is the same in each. You basically have to find the exit, but in order to do that, you have to fulfill a certain condition, such as finding this boat here. We also need to talk to this guy before we leave. Oh boy, an emergency exit, that's so useful. Basically, once we talk to him, we now know to use the Levy Stone in a desert. We knew that before, but I believe you have to talk to this guy because if you don't, you can't activate the airship. But anyway, yeah. So, 3 versions of this. You'll probably only see 2 unless you really want to go out of your way to see them all. I mean, personally, I wouldn't. I mean, as much as I like this map, it's not worth going through this dungeon more than necessary, really. Anyway, we had to find our way to a desert tile in order to unlock the airship. I forget which way the desert is, though. Oh wait, it's that way. But yeah, it's not the most amazing map ever, but it's pretty neat. I like it. It's based on the world map. That's not something we see in the main game. It's completely unique. And by the way, talk to this palm tree, and then we get this cutscene that we've already seen. You know, that was a lot less glorious the second time. Ah well, anyway, now that we have the airship, we can actually go find the exit without being bothered by any... Wow, how'd it get over here? Anyway, we can actually go to the exit without being bothered by random encounters. Coincidentally, the exit is over here, and this is... Okay, so basically, the airship was completely useless. So why did we get it? I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're going after treasures, it's useful, but I'm not, so screw that. Jump into the hole, and here we are at the last floor of the dungeon. Okay, so that was pretty fast, actually. I will give Hellfire Chasm one thing. At least it had the nerve to... Or at least it was nice enough to be over with quickly. I appreciate that. Thank you. Alright, this is Barashia. Now, of course, she was the third boss of, third Lord boss of Final Fantasy IV. Fought in the Tower of Babel, I believe? It was the Tower of Babel, right? There were a few towers in that game. Oh wait, no, it was Tower of Zot. Babel was the end, or more towards the end of the game. Anyway, a large gimmick of her first form in 4 was the fact that she could sort of morph into a tornado form, and then she would gain a lot of evasion, and the thing is, it could only be broken by Kain using the jump command on her. This time around, she doesn't have that. She doesn't even have any sort of move based on it. She has the moves Ray and Cyclone, neither of which are thunder attacks, so I don't know why I used Null Thunder, but whatever. In the original game, she had Maelstrom, Tornado, Lightning, and Stone Touch, all of which were pretty dangerous abilities, and she could potentially be a tough boss, especially since, like Scarmeleon, she countered you a lot. And of course, Maelstrom was just very devastating in that it put all characters to low health if it hit, and it usually hits. In that game, I found poisoning her actually was really effective, which was good since I couldn't lay a finger on her otherwise because she would just wipe the crap out of my party. But again, in this game, she's really not much of a threat at all. Plus, the fact that she has fewer moves makes her a lot easier. After all, she can't put you to low HP, and I'm thankful for that because you could potentially be in trouble, especially given Link's kinda moves randomly, like sometimes she's the first one to move, sometimes she moves last. You never know what's gonna happen. She could kill a person in that amount of time. But of course, Maelstrom, I don't think is even in this game. And of course, Ray is completely ineffective, especially if she attacks the person with a ribbon. Don't know what she wants to accomplish there. Then again, special attacks don't really do anything to me now. And there goes Barushia. Given she doesn't have her usual gimmick, her tornado gimmick, she's not really noteworthy. We do get the Braveheart, which I don't really think is that good of a sword. Let's see how it is. Okay, Cast Confuse, which I don't really find useful. So, okay, and apparently it's night only, making it twice as useless, and of course these two can't use it because they can't use any sword except the Masamune and maybe something else. Wink wink, nudge nudge. So, now that that's done, it's time for me to go back through the floors again, so we can face the other two bosses, which you should probably know by now. Because, they were in Final Fantasy IV. Alright, here we are, back on the 5th floor to take on the second boss of Hellfire Chasm. Now, if you've played Final Fantasy IV, you probably know who's coming up next just due to the positioning of the previous bosses. So, of course, this next boss we're fighting is the Drowned King Cognazo. Now, he actually works a lot differently than he did in his original incarnation. He keeps his signature move, Tsunami, however, it works a lot differently. In this version of the game, it's an ability you can actually see outside this battle. A number of different enemies can also use it, and it's not really that bad a move. It can damage you quite a bit. I believe it does like about 200-ish damage, maybe a bit higher depending on the character. But it isn't really too bad. On the other hand, in Final Fantasy IV, it was pretty devastating, and it would probably kill someone. Now, in this version I can just negate that pretty easily because I have Hilaga. Now, in addition, his weaknesses are also a lot different. In this version, he's actually weak to lightning and resistant to ice, which should go without question because he's a water turtle. Why would he be weak to ice, and why wouldn't he be weak to lightning? Well, in the original version, he was actually weak to ice, and he was only weak to lightning moves on occasion. Basically, whenever he tried to use Tsunami, he would throw up a water barrier just a turn before, and when he did that, he was actually weak to electricity, and in fact, using lightning moves would actually prevent him from using Tsunami. So basically, that's how you survive the battle. Now, if you couldn't get a spell out in time, you didn't know to use Thunder, or you tried to be a bit ambitious and use a high-level Thunder magic with Teller or something, then he would probably cast Tsunami on your ass and someone would die. Another big difference is the fact that Cognazo actually used a number of status effect moves in the original game, or Final Fantasy IV. In this game, he doesn't really have anything. He has haste, I believe, but he doesn't really use it all that much. In the original, he had, like, hold and sleep and blind and stuff, but that's missing here, oddly enough. In Final Fantasy IV, it actually made him a relatively tough boss. Again, that I base all my experience off the DS version, in which case Cognazo was a bit easier than Scarmeleon, but he could still put up a fight. He doesn't here, though. He just dies, basically. Anyway, that's it for this floor, so let's move on. Alright, here we are on the last floor of Hellfire Chasm to fight its final and probably toughest boss. Also the most fitting given the setting. Now, given we fought the other three Lords of the Element, it should be pretty obvious who this guy is. Given, it couldn't possibly be anyone else. So naturally, we are fighting Rubicant the Flame. And unlike in the original game, he doesn't actually heal you before the battle. I guess it's just been so long since that happened, or maybe since it hasn't happened yet, whatever. Apparently he just doesn't want to do that sort of thing. Now, starting off, he's quite a bit different from his original counterpart, in that he actually uses a move called Scorch, which is just a single target attack spell, which is kind of damaging, but it's really not that threatening. In the original game, he used a move called Inferno, which was basically his big attack, which devastated the party. And yes, it was an entire party attack spell. Now, I don't know why they changed it. I guess it's just because they didn't want to program in a new move, and they already had Scorch, so they were just like, okay, just give him that. But nonetheless, it does make him a lot less threatening. Now, he does have some of his original gimmicks retained. Now, if you try using any ice magic on him, it won't actually work. It doesn't explain why here, but in the original game, he more or less states that his cloak actually prevents ice attacks from, actually affecting him. Now, he is pretty much the smartest of the fiends in that he was able to negate all his weaknesses, which actually made him pretty tough. Like in this game, you can only attack him with normal attacks. Of course, given this is Final Fantasy I, normal attacks are basically the only thing you'll ever need. Of course, he's actually kind of similar to Cognazzo in that he has a really large attack that can actually really devastate the party, but before he uses it, he'll actually change, I guess, phases or something like that. Basically, whenever he's about to use Inferno, he'd actually open up his cape and he'd be vulnerable to ice. However, that wouldn't prevent him from using Inferno. Instead, you'd have to use Edge to steal from him. I don't know how that would prevent him from using the attack, but at that point he closes his cloak. Of course, there's nothing like that in this game. He just uses Scorch as he pleases, and at no point will he open himself up for ice attacks, so just keep with basic sword attacks. Well, basic melee attacks, rather. Also, another thing that's kinda disappointing about this game is the fact that bosses don't actually retain their original theme. Instead, we just get the standard boss theme, which is kinda lame, because the boss theme isn't terrible, but, it's not the mini-boss theme, so it's not amazing. I believe the PSP version actually changed that, though. All the bosses retain their original theme, which is pretty cool because the Four Lords of the Element actually had really good themes. I believe it was the Dreadful Fight, that's the theme they used. And, ooh, another ribbon. Of course, then again, I don't think I really need that, because, yeah, that puts my defense way down. Yeah, I think I'll just stick with the Diamond Helm. And of course, the sword he dropped, I believe, can only be used by ninjas, so that's useless to me. So, other than the fact that we fought a new boss, this was mostly a useless experience, but hey, whatever, we fought Rubicon, and he was actually kinda tough, I must admit. So the bosses are starting to get tougher, that's good to know. And on that note, Hellfire Chasm is done. Next time we take on the third bonus dungeon of the game, Life Spring Grotto.